Hi, and welcome to the Theme Park Duo podcast. Grab your park map, churro, and hop in line with us as we take you on a coast-to-coast adventure through the world of theme parks, haunts, conventions, and more. Now, here's your hosts, Nikki and Gabriel.
And welcome back to the Theme Park Duo podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Gabriel.
And I'm the other prettier host, Nikki.
Well, that's definitely 100% true. I mean, I can't really argue that fact. I'm the funnier one.
I guess that's kind of true, too. I don't know. That's debatable.
That is debatable. It just depends. Sometimes you're really funny and you're not even trying at all.
Yeah.
Like, you just say nonsense.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it personally.
Hey, whatever
That's
works.
why I love you. And I'm patting you on the head right now.
He is.
Anyway, we have so much news to talk about today, and our main topic today is going to be preservation versus modernization in theme parks.
So, like, keep the classic stuff or keep up with the times, basically.
Yeah, so there's a lot of little things in there, the details that we're going to go around, and there should be someone or two people arriving relatively soon. Hopefully there's... there we go, the knock at the door.
Oh, yeah.
Nikki, go answer the door. There's someone here that's joining us today for our episode.
Okay, here I go. I'm answering the door.
Hey!
Hey, what's going on?
Oh my God, how you guys doing? It's Steven and Tiffany from the podcast formerly known as Extended Q.
Yeah, what's going on? We're doing great. How are you guys doing out there in Las Vegas?
Great. Even though we answered, even though we went to your door and you opened it, we're still in Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, there's like a transportation thing going on here that like.
Oh, right, yeah.
I just don't like a lot of people.
It's just our TARDIS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just the TARDIS.
Right.
How did we not hear the TARDIS?
Oh, he took the parking brake off.
Oh.
There it is, yeah.
Well, anyways, welcome to the show, guys. And I know that we've been teasing it for a while. Your guys is coming on to the show and doing some of your segments and joining us for a lot of topics that we're going to be having here on this show. So it's finally great to have you here to do this.
All this time, our last Extended Q episode was back in August. So here we are now 7 months later. And we're finally getting...
Back into it.
So I may have to dust off the cobwebs, a little bit, but hopefully we can knock it out of the park.
It's finally great to have some company on the show, other than Nikki.
I'm great
Nikki.
company.
That's true.
Nikki is good company, Gabe.
She is very good company. I just wanted to be mean because I find it funny.
The things we do to our loved ones, like make fun of them and ridicule them, but out of love, right, Tiffany?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Love you.
No malice.
But moving forward, let's jump into the theme park goodness now, because we have a lot of things to talk about. Mm-hmm. So the first thing up is that Mystic Timbers out there at Kings Island, the one that's opening April 15th, is finally testing.
It's going down. It's Mystic Timbers.
Oh, no.
I'll let that slide because that was very witty. I enjoyed that. I will let that one go.
I gotta say, Gabe gets a lot of that from me. I add my own lyrics to songs all the time.
Just the other day, we were listening to the Lion King song, Circle of Life, and kind of the words that are in between. I don't know what language it is.
I think it's Swahili, but yeah.
Swahili.
It's like the background chant.
Yeah, under the background, Nikki started just saying "Moana, give me your banana" because she thought it sounded like that.
Hey Moana, give me a banana. That's what it sounds like.
But yes, so I deal with that on a daily basis.
Nothing offensive about that at all.
No, not at all. Nothing.
Apologies to your Swahili listeners.
Yes, I'm sure we have a million Swahili listeners.
Yeah.
Anyway, outside of that, another roller coaster that has big news coming out is Invader over at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, that new GCI coaster that's opening up April 7th.
I think you pronounced it wrong. I think it's Invade R.
Is it Invadar?
Yeah. Yeah, because...
Well, they don't believe in E's?
I guess in Viking culture, they have a 2-vowel limit. So it's... Or no, maybe what it was that Busch Gardens maybe had a rough financial year, and so they could only afford so many letters for the marquee, and they're like, you know what? Let's just lose the E. People will know what we're trying to say, and it's fine. They
told the graphics department, cut your budget, and so that's what they did.
They took out all the E's.
But so Invader,
it just kind of reminds me of back in the 90s when everything was extreme, but you wouldn't spell it EX, you just spelled it X. Extreme cheddar. Got out of my head. Great minds right there.
Yes.
No, and right before we quote unquote knocked on your door, Tiff and I actually watched the POV that dropped today. The Busch Gardens Williamsburg actually released a POV video of it. Tiffany, what did you think of it?
I'd ride it.
You would okay, so like that right there is a glowing endorsement because like Tiffany, for those of us, or for those of your listeners that don't know us too well, I love roller coasters, love them. Tiffany's a little more timid when it comes to coasters.
No, I'm just picky.
Okay, yeah, like the same difference. But we went to Dollywood last year, and I made her ride Lightning Rod.
I know, and I hated you for that.
I was literally just about to ask you because I didn't remember whether or not she went on Lightning Rod.
She did. It was the first ride she did that day, and because of it, she didn't do too many rides after because RMC coasters kind of break her because she also rode Twist of Colossus and had kind of the exact same thing. It's like we rode that, and then she was like, "Okay, I'll be at the bar for the rest of the day." But so like with this one, looking at it, like if Tiffany says that she'll ride it, that means that it's probably not, well, certainly not RMC intense. I mean, looking at it, like it looks like it's got some good airtime.
Yeah, I think it has like 7 to 9 airtime hills.
Which I certainly love airtime, but it doesn't look very tall. Like I think you said there was like a 70-foot drop, but even then, it doesn't seem like a very steep drop. Like it almost seems like a family wooden coaster in a way.
It does seem a little bit that way. I mean, that doesn't necessarily bother me as long as like the ride.
No, not that that's bad.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be unbelievably intense like Ghost Rider or like Goliath or anything. But I think having a smaller height kind of allows them to do a couple other fun aspects of the ride, which makes it, like you said, appealing more to like the family.
I would like to see Busch Gardens Williamsburg get like another like top tier coaster, like something to the level of like Griffin or Alpengeist or Apollo's Chariot or yeah, because like the last like really unique long intense throw ride was probably Verbolten, because I mean they have Tempesto, but that's kind of a one train launch forward backward like they're putting in over at SeaWorld San Diego next year for the Electric Eel.
Honestly, it looks like just like a classic coaster that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And one thing about it that I didn't even know until I started researching is that it's technically a hybrid coaster because it has steel supports, which is kind of weird.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, I don't really quite get why they would do that for any particular reason.
Do you think just like longevity of the ride?
I mean, that makes a lot more sense because there's less wood, less warping, less upkeep. Because when you have a wooden coaster, it inherently there's so much work that needs to be done on it for upkeep.
Maybe it's more like economically friendly, where like there won't be as much upkeep. Maybe it's better for the environment, saving some trees. I don't know. That's just kind of that's like wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah,
But, I don't know if that's
I have no clue why they would do that, but I mean, maybe there's somebody out there that could give us that answer.
We have been to Williamsburg, Virginia. There is no shortage of trees out there.
They're doing
it
just
is very
fine.
very green out there.
You know what's not green?
Nevada.
That is true, but boysenberries are not green. They're more like a purple.
No.
They're more like a purplish color.
Ah, Segways, not just a scooter for tools.
Yes, my segue. Thank you very much. And the Boysenberry Festival at Knott's Berry Farm is happening once again this year, extended, and it's starting on April 1st, which is not this upcoming weekend, the weekend after.
It's next weekend.
Yeah,
So
really,
not this
really
weekend,
soon.
Next weekend.
Well, when people listen to this, it's going to be this weekend.
It will be this weekend.
The Boysenberry Festival started 6 weeks ago, everyone.
April 1st.
Yeah.
So this is essentially the festival that everybody knows for the incredible foods that Knott's puts out. That includes boysenberry pretty much in every single dish in different aspects and ways. And they also have beers and wines and all that good stuff. Lots of acts and bands and live entertainment. It's incredible. It's a really, really fun event.
It's so much fun and so tasty.
I think the last time I was at Knott's Berry Farm, I think we missed the Boysenberry Festival by like 2 weeks. Like we're really bummed out because Tiff and I are huge fans of Food and Wine Festival out at EPCOT in Florida, and California Adventure is going to be doing their own Food and Wine Festival this year. I think next month they're going to start.
Yeah.
So like to hear about this Boysenberry Festival, I mean, like is it just like 100 assortments of fun buns? I mean, what is it?
You get boysenberry pickles
What?
No.
and boysenberry bread.
Well, I'm sure there's that.
Sort of.
There's A lot of it actually is the sauces. Like they have these little pop-up stands around the park, and they all have a specialty dish that they make. And some are also in like the actual food locations, but they have like what is it? Their fried chicken with boysenberry barbecue sauce. They have. A few years ago, they had a churro with a boysenberry filling.
They have deep fried alligator with boysenberry aioli.
Aioli.
Know that they're gonna have Indian fry bread with Nutella and boysenberry on the inside this year.
What? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and then also they're gonna have I think like a cannoli type dish with boysenberry sauce in it as well.
Yeah, so they have lots of different stuff.
Yeah, it kind of really ranges the gamut from things that sound incredibly amazing like that fried bread to things that you're like, I'm not quite sure about that. Like boysenberry ketchup, but surprisingly it's good.
Well, Steven actually had something today that we thought was going to be disgusting, but it turned out really good.
Yeah, we went to Yard House, which I'm sure they have a few of those out in California.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
they do.
They have a couple out here in Vegas. Like there was like this pork burger that I had that had, like bacon cheese and blueberry ketchup.
Ooh.
Which was actually quite lovely. Like it actually just kind of seemed like jam. Like I feel like the ketchup part of it is debatable. I mean, like it's ketchup in the sense that it's a condiment, but like otherwise it was just like a really nice accent to the flavor. It's like to hear like boysenberry ketchup. I mean, I'm sure that on paper that sounds gross, but I'm sure in actuality it's going to be delicious.
Yeah, I've never had anything at the festival that I haven't liked.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah.
Everything that we've had. Oh well, we haven't liked the boysenberry wine.
Oh, the wine was just
how
sweet,
disappointing.
concentrated grape juice.
God, I
So
swear I got diabetes.
Tiffany would
drinking
like that.
I would.
I
Like
don't-
Tiffany likes super sweet wines.
Think super sweet times like 5 or 10. It's
That might be a bit much for me, but
Oh, so it sounds more like an ice wine.
maybe.
I
maybe.
have no clue.
Do they actually sell wine by the bottle there?
No, they don't sell it by the bottle. They sell it by the glass, and I know that there's like tasting flights
There's
because
tasting cards.
they have beers and stuff too. So it's not just the wine. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you could taste too. And they also had the boysenberry beer, which I heard is just shock top with boysenberry mixed in it. I don't know, which is fine with me. I love shock top, so it's not an issue.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, it's a really fun event, really incredible event, and I'm unbelievably excited for it.
Yeah.
And we all know that Boysenberry Festival brings out the criminals in our society. It is a crime.
Really bad segue.
What is
it's
Knott's
terrible.
doing to combat the
I don't even know where we're going with this.
There's
going
security
through it.
checkpoints now built at
Oh,
Knott's.
okay. Oh, all right.
They literally popped up overnight. So the day that we're recording this, it popped up today, this morning. So they added what looked like to be 3 gazebos at the end of the California shop out front of this park, and they're reaching all the way to the planters. So you have to go through that in order to get to the front of the park. And honestly, it's about time.
Now, question, like, with those there, is it at least better looking in the entrance? Because, like, Magic Mountain looks like you're entering a correctional facility. So, I mean, like, is it, like, on par with that? Or is it, like, a little, quote-unquote, pleasant? I don't know.
think it adds anything aesthetically to the front at all.
Okay.
Well, at least this
Okay.
has gazebos that are covering over the top where they're going to do baggage check, and they're going to have the metal detector after that. You know, Six Flags essentially isn't hiding anything. It's just there, and it looks
Yeah.
really ugly. At least they have the gazebos over it and stuff. I mean, I'd say it looks more like what Disneyland has going on, just on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
all right.
what Disney has.
So, honestly, I think it's about time that they've done this, because there's no way that they can have just security guards at each gate checking 2 lines all day long. You know, it's not thorough. I don't think it's as safe as this can be. And also during Haunt, I think it'll back up quite a bit during Haunt, but I think it's better than the wanding each person, because 1, that takes a lot of time, but then 2, people still get away with bringing stuff into the park that's extremely dangerous.
Whatever keeps
Yeah.
the park safe, you know? I mean, like, looking back at the whole thing, because I feel like Disney was probably, like, the first one to really kind of start implementing this stuff. I mean, it's sad that we've kind of come to the point that we need to have things like these, but, you know, I mean,
Whatever
if it keeps
us
the guests safe,
like you
I'm
said.
for it, you know?
Yeah. So, staying on the same Knott's Berry Farm news, when you go to Boysenberry Festival, it's your last chance to ride Boomerang. Boomerang is closing.
Oh.
It's been there a long time.
Yeah, it's a veteran coaster, and honestly, I think it's about time. It's rough. It's real rough.
I mean, like, Tiffany, now, the last time you were at Knott's, you rode Boomerang, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what did you think?
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it? Okay. Well, good news.
I know. I don't
leaving.
have to be forced to ride it anymore.
And see, like, it's something where, like, yeah, it's sad, but I think, like, at one point there was a rumor that, okay, Knott's was going to be getting rid of one of their older coasters, and there was a possible threat between Boomerang and Montezuma's Revenge. I think there would have been more of a backlash had it been Montezuma's Revenge taken out. Because with Boomerang, I mean, there are clones of that style of coaster everywhere. I mean, when we were at Carowinds last year, we rode, I think it was called, like, the Carolina Cobra, but it is Boomerang with a different, paint scheme. Like, I think it's like the exact same. I think it's Vekoma, maybe.
Yeah, I think it might have been Vekoma. I'm not 100% on that though.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I remember a point when, like, it was really rough, and they kind of replaced the shoulder harnesses. It got a little smooth again, but I think it'd be cool to put, like, some other kind of new thrill attraction there. I hope they put something really cool in its place. Like, it's not a huge footprint, but hopefully we can get, like, a really cool, like, thrill ride in its place.
A thrill ride, or even possibly because they took out Riptide? Riptide was right next to it, and right there, all it is grass and flowers, and they use it for decoration depending on, like, what time of the season it is.
Yeah, there's like a little shop kiosk in between there, but they could take that out too.
They could take all of that out, and it gives them that whole big wraparound. And God forbid they could take out the ballroom as well, and that gives them a huge footprint for anything they really want to do. If they wanted to build another dark ride, they possibly could.
That could be cool.
Anyway, moving forward, going over to Disneyland, not too far down the freeway, off of the 5 freeway, getting off at Harbor Boulevard or Ball, whatever one you want to get off at. We have some news about Star Wars Land. People are freaking out, literally freaking out, and it actually caused Disney to release a video, kind of proving what people are seeing. There are AT-AT skeletons that are going up in one of the structures in Star Wars Land.
Also known as AT-ATs, in case people are like, why is he calling it an AT-AT?
See, the thing is it AT-AT or is it AT-ATs? Because I call it AT-ATs, and then like 6 people before me have been like AT-AT. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, it's like kind of confusing because, like, the Chicken Walker droid or the Chicken Walker Walker is straight up called the AT-ST. So I mean, like, there is understandable as to why it's called the AT-AT, but AT-AT is so much easier to say,
and it's kind of cooler.
It is, yeah.
But anyway, so they're up in the structure that they're building there. So I'm not quite sure if that's going to be in the attraction or if it's going to be part of the line.
I think it might be in the attraction. Like, I think it might be for that, like, Escape from the First Order, like, type of attraction that they're doing. Because they're doing, like, two attractions. They're doing a Millennium Falcon one, and, like, then they're doing something like a dark ride involving the First Order. So, I mean, it would make sense that maybe they just want these 2 giant AT-ATs to, I mean, who knows? It could be part of the queue. Wouldn't that be interesting?
That would be really cool, honestly.
That would remind me of the one in Florida.
Yeah, that's right. The Star Tours over at Disney Hollywood Studios. There's actually a giant AT-AT. That's right. That's part of the Endor Village. It's just right out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I remember walking under it and just staring at it for a really long time because we didn't go on Star Tours when we were there because it's the same thing that we have here. So we kind of just wanted to allocate our time a bit.
It's the exact same as the one in California, except the waits are shorter because they have more simulators.
And the queue's cooler.
Yeah.
Because the AT-ATs are.
Yeah.
So sticking with the Orlando topic, we can head over there to Universal Studios Orlando, well, Universal Studios Florida, and talk about Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon, the new ride that just soft opened at it's in the Universal Studios Park, correct? Not Islands of Adventure. It's in
It is, but do we have to talk about this ride?
I know. Can you just hear my eye roll? Because it's
that's your
extreme.
eye roll sound.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we have to talk about it.
To be fair, we have not ridden this ride. Mainly because, well, we haven't been to Orlando in a while, but it's also still in soft opening. Like, it hasn't had its official grand opening yet.
And also because I don't want to.
Well, I mean, look. I mean, I'm a Universal guy. Tiff and I met working at Universal Florida together. So, like, we certainly have a strong bond with Universal. But that being said, everything I've seen on this attraction, except for the queue seems cool, but everything I've seen on this attraction
looks horrible.
It doesn't look great.
There's been some quick videos that come out of, like, the actual attraction itself, not just the queue. And from what I saw on that, the jokes that were being used weren't that funny. They were more awkward. Even the way the attraction looked and the renderings and all of that looked very cheap. And I know that it's just a flying theater attraction, correct?
Yeah, it seems almost like the Europe in the Sky that's over at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which I think Europe in the Sky, not to go back to Busch Gardens Williamsburg for a little bit, but I think they're getting a VR upgrade for that attraction.
Oh, goodness.
I think I read, so... because, everything's VR now. But yeah, Universal released a 30-second clip of 4 random scenes from the attraction, crudely edited, no music in the background, only a few sound effects. So pretty much you just have Jimmy Fallon quipping with occasional sound effects over really shoddy CGI. Now, I imagine that in 3D, in the simulator, it probably looks a little better in person. I'm guessing it would have to.
But it just looks so bad, and nobody asked for Jimmy Fallon anything.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to Jimmy Fallon, I'm sure he's a lovely person. But I just kind of feel as though maybe Jimmy Fallon knows where some bodies are buried. or maybe Universal made some kind of deal with the devil where he's you have to put all of your effort into promoting Jimmy Fallon. And then they're like, or else what? And he says something in secret that's centered. Yeah, it's he's gonna steal their souls. So Universal's okay, we need to do a Jimmy Fallon ride now. He's been hosting the Tonight Show for 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And he was their tram tour guy for
at
a
Universal
long
Studios
time.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, see, I don't mind that. Because it's small doses, and also showing off characters that unless you're a fan of the show, and I mean I've seen many of these skits, but I guess I just haven't seen a lot of his characters.
Does he really have that big of a fan base though?
I don't think it has anything to do with that at this point.
You know what? According to the executives at Comcast, NBC, Universal, I'm sure he has a huge fan base.
He's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone really wants a ride based on a late night talk show host. I mean, I love Stephen Colbert, I love Conan O'Brien, but even then, I don't know if I want a ride based on them.
I'd go on a Conan O'Brien ride.
I would go on a
Jimmy
Conan
Fallon
ride, yeah.
It's a ride through his hair.
Oh my god, there'd be so much airtime on that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But honestly, this is actually a very good segue into our episode, to be 100% honest. And this is not me trying to stretch for a segue, because this has a lot to do with modernization over preservation, which is what our topic is today. They got rid of Twister, Ride It Out, which was an aged attraction, but beloved by a lot of people who visited the park. And they thought of replacing it with this, which is very much the brand spanking new, the current, the not necessarily technology, but something that, quote, looks better, 3D, motion simulator. To me, as soon as you have an attraction whose technology is inherently subpar to what preceded it, you're already on the side of the losing battle.
At the same time, though, I'm sure that in the eyes of Universal, in the case of Jimmy Fallon, that they feel as though it was an enhancement in terms of technology, in the sense you're putting in a simulator ride where there used to be a special effects show where you stood and watched things. So,
I guess so, but wouldn't you think that the technology behind that is inherently a bit more drastic than just the motion simulator attraction?
Yes and no. I mean, you guys never did Twister Ride It Out, did you?
No, we never did, but I know I've watched plenty of videos so that I was up on what was going on.
First off, I always had a problem with the fact that it was called Twister Ride It Out.
When it wasn't even a ride.
It's not a ride. They put the word ride in the title. And I mean, something that happened all the time, just kind of go back to our Universal days. Something that happens to not just Universal employees, but Disney cast members, Cedar, Knott's, SeaWorld, whatever, that you're going to have a guest come up to you and ask you, hey, is this a ride? When you're standing in front of something that's a show. And then if you're standing in front of something that's a ride, they'll ask you, hey, is this a show? So I feel like calling it Twister Ride It Out when it is not a ride is going to confuse guests. And I'm sure that for the 18 years it was open, it did confuse a few guests. Moving on from that, Twister was an attraction that was open a lot longer than it needed to be. I mean, I know with this, we're talking about preservation versus modernization. Twister was actually a product of modernization in a sense, because when Universal first opened, in that place was Ghostbusters Spooktacular, and when it first opened, it was kind of a show that was more about the making of Ghostbusters. Then they retooled it to be a show in which the Ghostbusters are selling a franchise opportunity that you get to be involved in, and in typical theme park fashion, something goes wrong, and then all hell breaks loose. So then they got rid of that, and I think it's because of the success of the Backdraft attraction in Universal Studios Hollywood, that they wanted to put something like that is a, hey, we're going to show you how we made the movie, but then you get to live a part of the movie. But Twister had come out, I think, like the year prior. No, like 2 years prior, because I think it opened in 98. And the movie Twister came out in 96. So like they had like a fresh new IP. The movie did well. They put it in there. And people, were fine with it, I guess. Until a couple years later when Men in Black opened. And suddenly all the attention went there. So ever since Men in Black opened, almost 17 years ago now, Twister just kind of sat there. And I feel as though Twister probably should have closed like 7 or 8 years ago.
Do you think that Universal specifically needs to kind of do that and keep up with their popular current movies and IPs rather than just sticking with beloved IPs?
I kind of think that Universal has now kind of pigeonholed themselves into a place where they kind of have to do that in a way. Because if you look at the park now versus the park that opened back in June of 1990, very little is the same. Like, I think the only things that were there that are still there are the Animal Actors Show, which is a completely new show since it first opened. The Horror Makeup Show, which is a completely new show from when it first opened. And E.T., a ride that has gone through numerous renovations in that time to kind of like enhance technology a little bit. So, whereas like a park like maybe Magic Kingdom or like EPCOT, like I feel like they may get a little more criticism when they update things just because they had kept things in place for so long. Universal is just kind of taken that like when a new ride opens, it's possible that in 15 years it's going to be gone. If that long. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really, if that, because a lot of their attractions don't seem to have a long shelf life, not all the time. It just really depends on space. And as we know, like Universal Studios Hollywood has significantly smaller footprint to work with than the one in Florida does. So we tend to have a lot more of a turnover of attractions.
If you go through it, Backdraft is now
Transformers.
Yep.
E.T. is now The Mummy. Back to the Future is now
The
Simpsons ride.
T2 is now Minions Mayhem.
Yeah, which like in the case of E.T. and T2 in Hollywood, both those attractions are still open in Florida.
I miss E.T. so much.
I don't, but then again, we had it there.
She has fond memories of E.T. actually, so I think that's the only reason why. Because I absolutely despise that ride.
I loved it so much.
I don't need the weird animatronic butchering my name. It's pronounced Steven, not Stefan. Come on, E.T., get it right.
That's why you just gave a fake name.
The first time I rode it, I was in the middle front bike, and E.T. was popping out of my basket. It was so cute.
Aww.
She's like tearing up. You have problems.
I cried when it closed.
She did cry when it closed.
I cried in the rain. It's a true story.
Well, if it's any consolation, it's still open in Florida. Although, even though nothing has been announced and I haven't heard much in the way of rumors, Universal does have that new thing with Nintendo going on, and I feel that if Nintendo's going to go anywhere in that park, they'd probably rip out Kid Zone and put it there.
Unfortunately, so that means we have to go out there soon.
Yeah, that's what that means.
But honestly,
it's a good park, even with the Jimmy Fallon ride. It's a good park.
No, there's a lot of really cool rides over there. I want to go really, really bad.
Harry Potter alone, which yeah, rip out whatever you want. Put in more Harry Potter.
I mean, see, that's a good thing. Like, now that we're on that subject, like, we're talking about modernization versus preservation. Modernization with the upgrades of attractions, like, including Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, which is an incredible attraction.
It is.
And to me, that is worth the modernization. To me, where it starts to falter is where there's unnecessary additions to attractions, or to me, getting rid of an attraction for something else that is inferior. That is to me where the modernization falters, really specifically with Universal, because with Disney and Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags, Six Flags doesn't really have that issue. Knott's Berry Farm kind of doesn't really have that issue all too often. It's mainly Universal and Disney that really had that huge issue. And when it comes to Disney, another example for them would be like over at the Magic Kingdom. They have the brand new Hitchhiking Ghost sequence at the end of their Haunted Mansion, which the entire mansion is animatronics, very much not dated, but very time-specific effects. And then the hitchhiking ghosts over here stick out like a sore thumb to me. Although it is cool, I feel like it's shoving it in there and shoving it down our throats. Like, look at this new technology. Oh my God, look at how amazing it is. When we don't really need it in the first place.
Well, I think that in the case of something like the Haunted Mansion, you have one side of it that is the Disney purist, the Disney historian side, that says, hey, you know, this is the attraction that Walt originally envisioned. Do not touch it. Shame on you. Do not touch it. But at the same time, you're still trying to make I wouldn't say a scary ride, but like a thrilling ride. And audiences are getting smarter now. Audiences, you know, like back in the 60s and 70s, maybe like they could fool you with some of the animatronics they were doing. Nowadays, not so much. Nowadays, it kind of, you know, like you can see the zipper on the back, as it were, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it is kind of important to still be able to wow a newer generation of people that have become essentially jaded. However, I think that, you know, like we talk about Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion, I think, is a good example of modernization. Even though I know there's many mixed responses to putting Jack Sparrow into Pirates of the Caribbean, I feel like that's a good example of modernization. And also, like, really, that's just kind of creating brand awareness. Because, like, even though there are lots of people that complain that Jack Sparrow was there, if he wasn't there, you would have just as many people saying, oh, man, you know, there should be a Jack Sparrow in there.
Yeah, and also I think that was done with the idea of respect for the original attraction, you know, because there's a big difference between modernization just for modernization. I can't talk today.
Take two
for modernization's sake.
There we go.
And then there is modernization for particular reasons. And when it has the original attraction's spirit in mind, that makes a big difference. And to me, that's what they did with Pirates of the Caribbean, because honestly, you have Jack Sparrow in there, but the rest of the attraction has pretty much kept its flavor and its tone. It hasn't changed significantly. And I guess you could say the same thing with Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, they changed some of the wording, but it's very slight. And then they just have the 3 Jack animatronics. Like, not much has changed, and it's still that classic ride that you love. So I don't mind that either.
And then with Haunted Mansion over here, we added Hatbox Ghost. So, you know, that is another addition to ours. That's modernization, but
it's also a throwback, because
it
the
is a
Hatbox
throwback.
Ghost, that's a whole like topic in itself, because it's a modern animatronic throwing back to a classic piece that was not in the ride for long.
I do think that one in particular is done and is placed in a very good spot, because you're going from a very iconic scene that is rather dated, I guess you could say, still incredible, which is the ballroom sequence. Then you're going into the attic, where there isn't really a lot of animatronics. There are some, you know, paintings where the heads disappear and stuff, and then you see the bride, who has been updated multiple times, and she's projection. So, you know, you have a little bit of an updated flair to it. Then you have Hatbox Ghost, which is very updated, and then you have a hill that doesn't have a lot after it. So it's almost like it's rhythmically within the ride, if that makes any sense, where you're kind of given a little piece of updated, then really updated, and then you have a space to forget about it where you see the original attraction the way it was before. So I think that's also a very good idea, or a good representation of modernization that fits.
That works.
Yeah. Well, and I think that attic scene is kind of an example of where, like, I'd like it when they kind of do an overhaul to the entire attraction. Because the attic, as cool as it is, and maybe it's just because I knew the classic attractions so well, but I think it's more than that I feel like that scene, as cool as it is, sticks out like a sore thumb to me, in the sense it's like watching a movie that was shot on film and then watching a movie that was shot digitally. That, like, it's something that you may not notice, but your brain notices it. In the sense, it's like something feels very off. And, like, I think it's because in the attic scene, and, like, even with the Hatbox Ghost, because there are projection elements there, and because there really aren't those kind of projection elements elsewhere, it feels oddly crisp compared to the lived-in feeling of, like, everything beforehand.
I agree. And I feel that more with the bride than I do with the Hatbox Ghost. Because the bride is clearly a projection on, like,
the bride is just plain terrible.
Yeah.
Like, really. Yeah. From what I heard, that actually was not supposed to be the finished product. They just ran out of time, ran out of money, and they said just put it in there. Which really, really stinks.
That's a shame.
Even in the happiest place on earth, there's always compromise.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's compromise, but sure.
I'm pretty sure it was compromise. Like, I'm sure, like, they wanted to do this, but it's like, fast, quality, and cheap. You can pick 2.
And usually they're gonna quick. They're gonna choose fast
and cheap.
And cheap more than anything else. And to me, moving forward onto like a different replacement, and I think we had mentioned it prior, which is fast and cheap to me, is the replacement of T23D with Minion Mayhem. This is something that I think I'm a little bit more angry than most normal people are.
I'd agree with that.
Really, in the case of that, they were trying to heal a wound in the sense. I mean, like it's a terrible analogy, but so they opened Minion Mayhem in Florida first, and it went in where Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast was, which that in turn replaced Hanna-Barbera, which was a opening park attraction. Jimmy Neutron did not last long. I think it lasted 7 years, maybe.
Yeah,
Goodness, that's fast.
In and out.
Yeah, it was not a very popular attraction. It also came in like I think a year or two before Nickelodeon ended their contract with Universal. So like the fact that it stayed that long after, I think was one of those, well, it's like, all right, well, I mean, we just built it, like we're not going to tear it down. But also they had to have something to put in its place. And Despicable Me was a huge franchise for Universal. And also that's another thing, like with Universal hasn't really had a lot of their own franchises in a sense. I mean, look at Transformers. That's Paramount and DreamWorks. That's not Universal. Look at Simpsons. That's Fox. Men in Black is Sony. Harry Potter is Warner Brothers. I mean, really, ever since The Mummy, I think the only real franchises that they've really been able to show off as like, all right, we did this, are Despicable Me and Fast and the Furious. And problem with Fast and the Furious is that the movies didn't really start getting quote unquote good until like the 5th one. And so even though Universal had Fast and Furious in their wheelhouse, and I mean I remember there being rumors of like a Fast and Furious stunt show even like back when I worked at the park almost 10 years ago now.
Oh wow. So
I mean it was always there, and like they did a Fast and Furious thing on the studio tour at Universal Hollywood. I don't mean Supercharge is there now. I mean the Tokyo Drift thing with the robots on the Kuka arms that was really stupid.
Yeah.
And honestly, I like that better than what exists now.
I'd have to agree.
Okay, I'm not going to say that what they have now is good, but, I mean, that Kuka arm thing was stupid. It was just so...
unapologetic.
It was fun, though.
I mean, I really feel that was, okay, we need to represent our franchise, we have 3 weeks to do it.
I mean, I guess I could
Tiff, did you ever see the thing with, the Kuka arms, where it's like you're in, this, what seemed like a Tokyo auto shop, except it was outdoors, and you had 2 cars there, and things were blowing up, and then suddenly the cars flip toward the tram, but they're attached to the Kuka Robo arms, which is the same thing they use for the ride vehicles of Harry Potter. Tiffany, did you ever see this?
I don't think I did.
Even if you did, you probably wouldn't have remembered it.
I probably threw it out of my mind.
Because it was kind of showing the making of it rather than
a scene.
Than a scene. It was these are the cars we use. They're so light. We can just flip them through the air. And then they added the music and they danced. It was fun.
And they danced.
It's just another tunnel.
Now we have Stink Pickle.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't ridden it, The Rock says Stink Pickle, and it's really funny. He calls someone a stink pickle.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now listen here, you stink pickle.
Don't call me a stink pickle.
But still, I mean, even then, I would rather have The Rock and Vin Diesel and the guy that plays Gaston in Beauty and the Beast rather than the weird robo-arm robots that dance. That's just me.
I'm just envisioning a future where the tram tour is just one continuous tunnel of 3D experience after 3D experience, and it's kind of making me irrationally angry.
You probably should not go to Universal Florida then.
Okay.
Because, I mean, literally, you walk in the gate and straight ahead you got Despicable Me, Shrek 4D, Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon. To your right, you got T2 3D. You have 4 3D screen attractions before you hit anything else.
Okay, I forgive that because that is an awesome attraction. If you listen to our last show.
Speaking of, going back to that, because I feel like we went on this huge tangent while we were still talking about T2 3D. I know that T2 3D is still fairly popular in Florida. I don't know if it was as popular in California. And T2, at least in the case of Florida, is actually a fairly expensive show to run. There's a fairly big stunt cast, and there's actually a pretty big crew. A lot of people don't know this, but there's actually a decent crew that runs that show. You have people that are actually in the booth running the show. I think they're spot ops. You have guys just in charge of the weapons in the show. There's actually like a gun cage behind, like a backstage, which like someone is like in charge of like handing off guns and ammo to the performers. So there are a lot of people working on it, and it's like, okay, we have a great attraction, but it's not as popular as it once was. It's expensive to run. And the IP, as great as T2 is, it's a little outdated. I mean, T2 is great, but can you say that there's been a good Terminator sequel in the past 25 years?
No, probably not. I'd say that T2 was a better sequel than anything else that was filmed afterwards.
Oh, absolutely.
T2 3D, sorry. The attraction was a better sequel than anything else.
So because of it, I mean, it made sense. And also, Terminator is not a Universal IP. It makes sense from a purely money-making standpoint as to why they would put Despicable Me in its place. Now, what is better for California is that Despicable Me, at least by putting it in the T2 building, they can do it. They can have 2 ride theaters, whereas in Florida they only have the one, which is why in Florida the line is constantly at like an hour or more.
Oh, that's not worth it.
And the ride is not worth it, regardless of how long that line is.
Yeah,
and agree to disagree. It's cute.
It's cute, but that's it. I mean,
See, I think Despicable Me is an incredible movie. I just feel like they missed the mark incredibly with this attraction. I think it's a cheap ride that they could have created to make easy money, and that bothers me when they have a franchise film, as you said, that has done incredibly well when they could have put in more money to make a better attraction.
I think the Despicable Me would have been great as a dark ride, kind of like Cat in the Hat over at Islands of Adventure.
Yeah, I
think like that would have been really cool to like be able to like go through like Gru's lair and like actually have physical objects. But then again, I mean, I'm a fan of this. Tiff, I know you're a fan of this, and Nikki and Gabe, I assume you guys are a fan of it. I love animatronics. I love like actual figures because the whole point, especially at Universal where it's ride the movies, now you're literally writing movies. Whereas, like, I like the idea of like going to a park. It's like, hey, remember that movie that you saw in 2D? Well, what if you saw it in not 3D with glasses, but like actual 3 dimensions in which like you have physical objects in front of you. It's like you're
practical.
Yeah, practical effects. I love practical effects. And here we go with the modernization thing. We're moving away from practical effects, and we kind of go back to the whole got to make it edgier, got to make it look cooler, and projection. And like I'm one of the biggest supporters of projection, especially in like live theater. I love projection in shows, but it has almost become a crutch in the theme park industry. And I completely get it, because especially when like you have a soft open, you have an attraction that's opening up, and you think guests are going to love it, and it turns out that they don't love it, or they have minor nitpicks.
It is definitely easier to fix problems if it's just projection than if it was an animatronic or some sort of practical effect that requires like all these different systems to make it run. And if they have one problem with the system and they try to get that fixed and it makes another problem with another system, I get it. It can get very expensive very quickly, and projection is just an easy way out. Yes, it's expensive up front because you have to pay for the performance and the editing and all that. But after that,
it pays for itself.
It pays for itself.
Yeah.
And I think Universal knows that, because the rides where they actually put in a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of money that are really popular are a mix of both those worlds, like Forbidden Journey. It's
even the Mummy.
Even the Mummy and Terminator. Even it blends the live sets with the 3D screens, or just screens, very very well, I think.
Yeah.
Back when Islands of Adventure first opened, back in '99, it's actually a soft opening like they were doing. Like my parents had like gotten tickets, say, hey, let's go check out the new park. It doesn't officially open for a couple months, but it's open like in a sneak preview. Like, okay. I knew nothing about the Spider-Man ride, other than there was a Spider-Man ride. When I rode that the first time, it was like seeing the face of God. It was it was breathtaking. I mean, like the idea of it's a dark ride, but it has these projection elements, and it's 3D, but like also, your field of view changes as you move past it. I mean, it was so brilliantly done. Nowadays, I feel like you see that everywhere. Yeah. But when Spider-Man did it, it was the first. It was the first ever attraction of its kind.
Do you also think that makes a big difference because it's a cartoon as opposed to trying to look like real life?
Well, I mean, I feel like Spider-Man was a great place to start because, you couldn't really do that with the live action element back in '99. But like to have something that is based on a comic, you can have it be cartoony. That kind of allows you to to try more things if the final product doesn't have to look photorealistic, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So you can fudge things more.
Yeah. Whereas, like, nowadays, I mean, you have Fast and Furious Supercharged, you have Skull Island Reign of Kong, in which they are going for more of the, for more of the photorealistic, and, like, they can do that because, I mean, like, the Spider-Man ride is almost 20 years old. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's a little nuts that attraction is that old, and, you know, it's still pretty much highly regarded as one of the better attractions that Universal Orlando has.
Yeah.
And, you know, just to touch upon something else, just because I want to get it out of my head, because I won't get it out of my head unless I say it.
Yeah.
Another good ride vehicle or ride system that would have been good for Minions would be like a Wild Mouse Dark Ride mix.
No.
Kind of like what they did with Scooby-Doo. They had a Scooby-Doo Wild Mouse coaster where there was dark ride elements, but then you would go into like a main room that had lots of practical effects in it as well. Like, to me, that would make a lot more sense because of exactly what the video you're showing does that kind of stuff.
I think it would have been cool. I mean, Tiffany, I know that you hate Wild Mouse rides.
I do. They should not exist.
But like spinning Wild Mouse rides are okay, right? Like the Primeval World that's at Animal Kingdom. You like that one, right?
I feel like they just shouldn't exist, and then I'll feel so much better about life.
Just put her on the one at Knott's, and then she won't ride anything else after that.
Yeah. Well, but going back to Despicable Me in Florida, they were taking an existing ride system and just making a new ride of it. I mean, the ride system that is Despicable Me was the exact same ride system as Jimmy Neutron, was the exact same ride system as Hanna-Barbera. So really, I mean, like, even though it's a new attraction...
Hanna-Barbera.
I miss Hanna-Barbera too, but like, I think that was more of an issue of we don't have the rights anymore. It was also getting a little stale. I mean, like, you had... Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera up there, and they've both been dead for over 20 years. So it's kind of weird that they're talking to us like we're there. I'm like, you guys are long dead.
I know, but I loved that ride.
I did too.
I love the Jetsons and Yogi.
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
That's good stuff. I mean, like, even if that wasn't stuff that we grew up with, you know, it's very reminiscent and fun to look at, you know, older cartoons like that. And I totally get that.
See, but, okay, so I'm heading more towards the, like, modernization side for Universal specifically because they have to keep up with the times.
Yeah, but
what's beloved for us is not going to be beloved for a kid who's 10 right now, you know?
That totally makes sense, but when you're looking at it from a perspective of what Universal is doing, they're simply making everything motion simulator, 3D, and you get wet.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Which is kind of like the three trifecta that they're going with on every attraction now. And to me, that is not modernization. That is actually staying in the past because motion simulator attractions have been around for a very long time.
I don't think it's so much that they're staying in the past. I just think that they're technically stuck. You know, in that, because I mean, trust me, I mean, like, they want to create the biggest, best new thing. I mean, that's what Harry Potter came out of. Harry Potter came out of Kuka making the Robo Coaster, which was a prototype that they showed off at IAAPA back in like 2002, 2003. I remember writing like an early prototype of it, and like when I wrote it, I was like, oh my god, this thing is really cool. This is the future. And like they had like a drawing, like they hadn't built anything yet, but they had a drawing of one of those on an actual ride track system.
Yeah.
Which ultimately became Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. And I mean, this was like almost 10 years beforehand. So at things like the IAAPA convention, which is where like all these companies are like showing off their new really cool stuff. I mean,
I want to go so bad.
Dude, I've been twice. Like, it really is like, I mean, like everyone's like, oh, gotta go to Comic-Con. It's like, no, like for me, it's IAAPA. I mean,
I would drool over everything.
It is like being a kid in a candy store. And also like for Tiff and I being on the technical theater side of entertainment, there's also just like a lot of really cool, like simple effects that like you don't really think about, but like there are vendors that like they are trying to sell this effect, and like you're seeing really cool stuff for the first time there.
Yeah, I mean, I would die to go. I would die to go. No way I wouldn't, because then I couldn't go.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, your ghost could go.
Yeah, and then I would enjoy it, and then I could scare people. I love scaring people.
Yeah.
Kill me, Nikki. Kill me.
You would get in free.
That is true. I would get in for free. There's a lot of benefits to dying.
Oh, right there. Like what I meant now.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, like, I have an issue with the whole motion simulator, and I do agree that they are kind of technologically stuck and have kind of pigeonholed themselves when it comes to that technology, because I think they could go past that, because it's no longer ride the movies anymore, right? That's not their slogan. That used to be, right? So, I mean, they could easily move past that and do different style attractions. You know, I feel like there's a bigger abundance of variety in Orlando than there is at Universal.
True, but it's also because I feel like they have a bigger play area, you know, in Florida.
I feel like we've been picking on Universal a lot.
Oh, and nothing but love for Universal. But at the same time, I think that out of all the theme park chains, they really are the ones that like to play with the formula as much as possible. Now, like, unfortunately, they have kind of pushed everything to that, you know, 3D simulator thing. I mean, really, I think that had Simpsons opened 3 years later, that would have been in 3D, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind messing with the formula, because honestly, that's where the best ideas come from, is when you mess with the formula, when you go outside the box, when you try something different. Just to me, they're not trying anything different.
Well, but here's the thing, that sometimes when you try different, and like even if you're successful, you get a lot of detractors. One of my absolute favorite Disney attractions is Mission Space at EPCOT, which itself was an example of modernization over preservation, in that it replaced an iconic original EPCOT attraction, Horizons. Well, I mean, like, not original. Like, I think it opened like a year or two after EPCOT did. But Horizons began to feel very dated. And it came to the point that they closed it down. I think it may have even been something as simple as like their sponsor decided, okay, we're done. And so they're like, well, there's no point in keeping it open, so they closed it. But they never had a space-themed attraction over there. And Horizon was all about the future, which as, you know, Tomorrowland can tell you over the numerous incarnations like it has become, the future becomes dated almost instantly. Yeah.
That's the one problem that both those parks have had, Tomorrowland and Epcot.
And see, like, I actually think probably the most successful Tomorrowland that I've seen in terms of theming is actually Discoveryland at Disneyland Paris, because they decided to go for the Jules Verne steampunky version of the future, where it's science fiction as told from the 1800s. And like, I think that that's a really cool look, because it can never be dated because it already is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really smart.
Even though Star Tours does feel kind of out of place there, but like, that's another topic. But Mission Space is an attraction that was really cutting edge technology. To my knowledge, it has not been used anywhere else. My dad worked at WDI during the creation of Mission Space, and so a year before it opened, I got to be kind of a guinea pig on this attraction, and like actually experience it for the first time. And like, I had heard about it. I had heard, like, you know, like from my dad, like, okay, like you're in a capsule and you experience liftoff, you feel liftoff, but you also kind of feel zero G, which, like, okay, I don't know how they're going to do that. But like, it's like, okay, but it's like a centrifuge. I'm like, okay, that sounds really cool. I'm curious to see how it works. Then I rode it. And when you lift off, I don't know if when you guys were in Florida, if you rode Mission Space.
We did.
We did.
I made him ride the intense side too.
Good.
You didn't make me ride the intense side. I wanted to go on the intense side, lady.
Yeah.
But like, that sensation is so cool. It's so unique. But a lot of people can't handle it. And I mean, there have even been a couple unfortunate instances of people that have died after riding it. Not because of the ride system itself, but I mean,
enlarged hearts or something wrong with them that they didn't know.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's unfortunate that the ride gets blamed on that, but still, it's like, when that news breaks out, and I mean, it's very easy for that news to break out, that makes a lot of people go, oh, I don't know if I can ride this. And like, that's why they introduced the green side, because when that attraction first opened, it was intense all the way across the board.
Just the one option.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't until later when like people were like complaining that they get nauseous on it that they started adding the barf bags to the simulators. And then they split it up as green and orange.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I went on the attraction, I thought I was going to pass out. Like, I started to kind of see stars a little bit, and we went on the orange side.
Yeah,
I've actually never done the green side, and like, it's kind of been on purpose, just because I want to ride it as close to the original version as possible. I guess that's kind of a mark for preservation right there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also, I've heard from so many people that if you're used to the intense orange side and you ride the green, less intense side, that it actually kind of makes it more nauseous just because you feel like you should be feeling these forces, but you're not. So you're just kind of sitting in a cabin watching a movie, shaking from side to side, and apparently that can be a little disorienting.
So it's like a motion simulator that's not synced to what you're looking at, or like VR that's not synced to what you're moving on. So I can see that could be very nauseating.
That right there, I think, was an example of, with simulators. I mean, yeah, your complaint is that everything is a simulator, but a simulator affords the ability to take you anywhere in a very small space. And in theme parks, certainly in California, in the case of Disneyland and Universal Studios Hollywood, that you don't have much real estate. So you have to take people to a whole new world in as little square footage as possible. And simulators, hands down, afford that opportunity. But then there was still, the risk. It's like, well, we don't want to get stale. And I feel like that's where Mission Space came from. It's a simulator. It doesn't take up much space. No pun intended. And and you feel sensations that you do not feel on other simulators, but then people complain that it makes them sick. And so then we roll back. And, we're kind of stuck in this valley where it's like we went to this technology, we tried to improve it, but by improving it, we made people upset, and so now we're kind of stuck at the bottom of the hill.
It's kind of like a one way of thinking, though. I mean, it's not always going to be that way, and just depending on how you're changing the structure of your attractions and how you're changing the basis of what you're building can really vary on reaction. I mean, let's go to another thing, I guess, that had a very negative reaction and is on the side of preservation as well. The Tiki Room and under new management.
Did you ever see it?
I've watched some videos of it. I think I don't have such an intense reaction as everyone else just because I didn't live it in the moment. I didn't think it was unbelievably, horrendously, tragically terrible. I thought it was significantly worse than what the original attraction was. But that is definitely an example that preservation, supersedes modernization with new characters involved.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first heard the idea for that, and once again, this is during my dad's time at WDI. This is in the mid-90s. And, I remember hearing that, they want to upgrade Tiki Room. And, by that point, Tiki Room, as much of a beloved Disney classic as it is, it was stale. I mean, it wasn't getting the lines. It wasn't getting, the throughput. So it's all right, well... And see, what people seem to forget is that these attractions, it costs money to run these things. So, if you don't have people going through them, that's just a giant money pit. And, at that time, people weren't really as much into the Disney nostalgia. And, I think it's because much hadn't changed by that time. So, things were either, new and exciting or getting old. Whereas, now, because everything's been changed, people kind of crave that nostalgia from, when they were a kid, and so they kind of want that back. And, that's why you always see a group waiting to go into Enchanted Tiki Room, especially at Disneyland. I mean, it certainly doesn't help that there's a lovely Dole Whip stand right there.
I mean, it's always a packed house over here. I mean, I don't think there's been a time that I've gone in Tiki Room where there hasn't been people.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the mid-90s at Magic Kingdom, that place was dead often. So they wanted a way, it's well, okay, we don't want to rip it out and just put something new in its place. We want to preserve it, but we want to update it. And at the time, 2 huge animated films, Aladdin and The Lion King, had come out. Hey, both those movies have talking birds in it. Let's put them in it. Yeah, when I first heard the idea, I was oh, hey, that could be a fun little shot in the arm. I was I don't know, 8 or 9 at the time that I heard this.
You said that saying at 9?
I probably did. I probably used those large words like that. Oh, yes, quite. Oh, yes, quite. That'll be quite the shot in the arm that this attraction needs. Now, please, teach me how to write cursive.
Why is young you British?
What the heck happened? He did come here in a TARDIS, just saying.
Oh, true.
We were still living in the colonies back then, so. But then I remember when it opened, we went in, and it was just awful. Because, it was weird. It's it delivered exactly what we wanted and everything we feared.
Yeah.
I think it's when, Iago starts going into singing Friend Like Me and, stuff like that. You're oh, jeez. This is just painful.
I think there's times where audiences say that they want something.
Oh, yeah.
And then once they are given that something, they immediately respond with, oh, wait, no, I really don't want that.
Yeah.
Well, I just had a thought, which is smart on Disney's part because it makes you crave the original, but it also gives you the change you need. What they do in California, at least, is their seasonal layovers. You know, like Haunted
Absolutely,
Mansion.
That is a fantastic example.
And a Hyperspace Mountain. And see, like, I don't mind things like Hyperspace Mountain or Ghost Galaxy, as cheesy as Ghost Galaxy is. But at least it gives you the opportunity to kind of experience something new. But even if you don't like it, it's going to go back to the old way very shortly.
And then you're so excited to ride it back when it's to its original form. And Jingle Cruise, too. They just started doing that the last few years.
Yeah, honestly, we haven't had regular Space Mountain in a while, by the way.
Well, I mean, like, the last time we went to Jungle Cruise, I think we rode the Jungle Cruise, and, like, it was kind of like pulling teeth.
Sometimes the Jungle Cruise can be like pulling teeth in general, though.
Like, really, that's kind of a form of modernization, but not an intentional one, in the sense where, like, you're using, like, the really bad puns and such, but, like, back then, that was straight up wit. Whereas now it's almost a parody of itself and it doesn't quite work as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, what you were saying was that, like, craving nostalgia now, I feel like that is almost an ebb and flow of life.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that happens where, our generation at this point is really craving the nostalgia factor from Disney. And at some point down the road, it's going to flip again, and people are going to want brand new attractions again. Something that's not an IP, something that's creative and different, something they haven't seen before. And then years down the line from that, it's going to happen again, where they're going to say, hey, those rides we liked, turn them back into what they used to be, I feel like that's kind of what life happens in life all the time, not just even in theme parks.
Well, and I mean, I certainly remember a time when, like, Disney was creating brand new IPs for their parks all the time. I mean, look at Alien Encounter. I mean, even though, like, that was born out of wanting to do an attraction based on the film Alien, it became its own original IP.
I think Alien Encounter is extremely underrated, and I think it was one of those attractions that I think if it came along a little bit later and it wasn't in Magic Kingdom, we'd probably still have it today, because I think it was wise beyond its years for an attraction.
Because, like, I know this is a heated disagreement between some friends of mine who are huge Stitch fans. I think Stitch's Great Escape, which is what replaced Alien Encounter, is a hot pile of garbage.
I agree.
I kind of agree.
And see, that right there is kind of an example, or a bad example of modernization, in the sense that they had the Alien Encounter tech, and really, I mean, if you've done Stitch's Great Escape, you've kind of done Alien Encounter. I mean, like, I almost said, it feels so childish, but yeah, like, it's a park for families and kids. I get that, but it almost feels pandering toward kids in a way, whereas, like, Alien Encounter almost challenged you in a way. And I mean, who knows? Maybe, like, people, when they come to a Disney park, especially the Magic Kingdom, maybe they don't want to be challenged. Maybe that's the thing. But Stitch's Great Escape almost feels like a babysitter. I feel bad for the parents that have to go in there. I've heard a rumor, and I mean, this is purely rumor, that it may be on its way out.
I heard that the rumor was that they were going to replace it with a Wreck-It Ralph attraction.
Yep, that's what I heard. And but see, that's a bit of modernization that, like, I could be down for. Although I hope whatever they do, that it's able to withstand the test of time. Because, like, Wreck-It Ralph is awesome now, but will it be as awesome in 10 years, 15 years? And see, that's where I think something like Harry Potter, I know we're jumping parks, but Harry Potter works in the sense that they put a lot of effort into it, but Harry Potter doesn't look like it takes place now. Pirates of the Caribbean doesn't take place now. Haunted Mansion doesn't take place now. And the reason why you're able to kind of have those attractions withstand the test of time is because they are in essence, timeless.
That's true. I mean, there's a lot of Disney animated films that definitely could fit into that mold, like Toy Story. But we have Toy Story Midway Mania, although Toy Story takes place like back in the 90s, and the film is very much dated. The characters themselves can be placed in any situation that you want them to be placed into, because the characters themselves are timeless.
Yeah, and like that's kind of a problem that you run with or that you run into with IPs as well, is that it's important to strike while the iron's hot. But you don't want to pour millions and millions of dollars into something that 5-6 years from now people will not care about. Avatar. And
Frozen.
Frozen. I mean, sure, everyone loves Frozen. A lot of people still love Frozen now, but like now that Moana's come out, I feel like maybe the heat's been taken off Frozen a little bit. No pun intended.
But by the way, I do think that the modernization of Maelstrom to the Frozen attraction was actually good, because not a lot of people went on Maelstrom at all at that point, and it was very dated.
It was a fairly popular attraction, though. I mean, it was the only attraction in World Showcase that had Fast Pass. I have zero problem with putting in a Frozen ride. It was very popular. People love it. We think it's a good movie, and I mean, certainly, like, if you have an attraction based on Lilo and Stitch, I think you should have an attraction based on Frozen. But then again, I'm also one of those weird people that does not like Lilo and Stitch. Sorry. What? Sorry. I'm not a huge fan of Lilo and Stitch. But see, also to me, Lilo and Stitch feels very dated.
How does it feel dated?
I disagree entirely.
Like, I know, like,
Your
it was
dog
only
disagrees too.
Ignore my dog. She doesn't know much. She eats her own poop. I mean, even though, like, it only came out 10 years ago, I just feel like a lot of, like, the references in it just kind of feel very dated. And I mean, even looking at, like, something like Moana, I feel like that whole joke where, like, he picks up the chicken and says, when you write it with a bird, it's called tweeting. I feel like that joke's going to become very dated in about 5 or 10 years.
It could.
I hope it does, but that's just because I'm kind of annoyed with the idea of Twitter. Even though I use it as a necessity, but, like, I don't know. Like, when it comes to Twitter and things like that, like, I feel like that old guy that's yelling at the kids to get off his lawn. So I'm probably not the person to be speaking for modernization in this case. But in the case of Toy Story, like, Toy Story was really cool at the time. But yeah, like, you look at it now, it's very simple, it's very simple, it's very dated. But the Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger spin in Florida or Astro Blasters in California, exact same attraction, just different names. That kind of feels dated now. But also, I think it's because that was made with the mindset of the late 90s Toy Story that, like, I think Toy Story 2 had just come out. And so, like, it was still that very kind of simple kind of experience in a way. It was good, but it was simple. Whereas Toy Story Midway Mania is kind of an example of the legacy Toy Story has left behind. I don't know, maybe I'm looking into this way too deep, but, like, I do think as though that with Midway Mania, it's that Toy Story earned its place amongst, like, popular IPs that have withstood the test of time, whereas the Buzz Lightyear ride was them striking while the iron was hot.
I agree.
I totally agree with that. And, you know, when it comes to the topic of the modernization and preservation, it seems like, going into this conversation, I really didn't expect it to be as in-depth as it got.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a very much black and white conversation, but it seems like going through a lot of this, especially with Toy Story, T2, Back to the Future, all these different attractions that we've named.
Seasonal layovers. There's so many different facets to it.
Like you said, there's so many different facets and concepts of why something works, why it doesn't work, ride systems, technology, and all these things. It was a lot more overwhelming than
a little bit.
I mean, upgrading attractions to new popular IPs is kind of a necessary evil. And I mean, when you're pouring that much money into it, you got to make sure that you get, your ROI or your return of investment on it. And so that's why, even though the part of me is really upset that they closed Tower of Terror at California Adventure, I understand why they needed to put in a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. But I also think that Guardians of the Galaxy ride could have been great on its own. You could have put it in Tomorrowland. But I don't feel like turning Tower of Terror into Guardians of the Galaxy was the best way. I mean, who knows? It could be awesome. I'm actually hoping it's awesome.
I'm really quite
too.
excited about it, just from looking at it and waiting and the anticipation. I'm really excited about it. And throughout this entire conversation, I'd like to say that I am on the side of modernization. I want things to move forward. I want things to progress and get better and be cooler and be more fun and more creative. It depends on the creativity of the person to be able to go past certain aspects and tropes of the theme park world.
That's what I got out of this too. I'm for modernization if it's done correctly. If the parks don't take the easy way out in putting in a new IP and getting rid of something else. If they actually put the effort into make sure, if they do it smart, if they make sure it's something that will stand the test of time and they put the money and the effort into making it the best it can be, then I'm for it.
Yeah. Now, Tiffany, you haven't talked in a while. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I want to know your thoughts on this. I want to know what you think about modernization versus preservation.
Honestly, for me, I think it really just depends on the attraction itself. Mostly because, yes, I do prefer that nostalgia factor. So I feel like there are those certain attractions that just should not be touched. Like Tiki Room. I understand that at some point in its life it will need to be updated. But for now, because of the nostalgia factor and they're getting so much business from that, they're not going to touch it, which is great. But I do like the modernization, but I feel like it's more for parks. I hate to say it, but it is for branding. Like Disney is such a big brand that it's harder for them to modernize a lot of their attractions without getting a lot of backlash. So for the Tower of Terror, for example, when they said they were going to change that over, they got a lot of backlash about it because it was such an iconic tower, it's an iconic ride, and this, that, and the other thing. So they have a big hole that they have to fill just because it was such a great ride and so many people do remember and like that ride, that they're just going to have to blow it out of the water, which hopefully they will, but
I hope they will.
We're going to see what happens with that. Now for like Universal Studios or Six Flags or things like that, I hate putting them as like a B and C park, but Disney has such a huge brand over them that, again, they have bigger shoes to fill than the other parks. So,
Universal's catching up, though.
yeah. So they're able to do away with more things and not get as much backlash. Like when Twister was closing, they didn't get a lot of stuff. People rooted behind them.
Nobody was sad when that attraction
because
closed.
it was people who had ridden it are like, that needed to go a long time ago.
However, nobody said, man, we need to close this so we can put a Jimmy Fallon ride in this place. Nobody said that.
You know what this park is missing? Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
No, but those parks can definitely get away with it more because the fan base isn't as big.
Yeah, I think that something that people keep kind of getting stuck to, especially with Disney, is everyone's like, how dare you do this? This is Walt's park. But Walt Disney was also the one who said Disneyland will never be completed. It will always be changing.
Exactly. People forget that.
Yeah. And I mean, especially in the middle of a suburb in Anaheim, you can't exactly expand it too much. So, like, the only way you're going to change it is to shut something down and put something in its place. You know?
Yeah, they're completely landlocked over there.
Look at Adventure Through Inner Space, an attraction that opened in the 60s in Tomorrowland that in and of itself was modernization of Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland was getting stale in the sense that people just didn't really, they didn't really care about the space exploration side of it or like the hopes for the future, the home of the future, that kind of thing. So they wanted something that was a little edgy, a little dangerous, a little sci-fi.
Yeah.
And so they put that in. That was an example of trying to be modern. Then 20 years pass, and suddenly that ride feels archaic. So then Star Tours gets put in its place. And then same thing, Star Tours. As great as that attraction was, and I mean, I love the original Star Tours. But, there's still that whole thing that you have Star Wars that is this IP that especially with the prequels, whether you like them or not, it has expanded that universe greatly. To where it's like, if you just had this ride that lived solely in one or two films, you would have people going, guys, you have a whole universe. Let's play with this. So, like, especially when it comes to these IPs, like them getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it makes sense to modernize it. And regardless of what we think about the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, as whether we're upset about Tower of Terror closing, look, whether we like it or not, a Guardians of the Galaxy ride or a Marvel ride in general, it needed to happen. It had to happen because Disney is sitting on this IP. They need to use it. They run into kind of a few rights issues thanks to Universal in Florida. That's why you don't see much, if any, of a Marvel presence at Walt Disney World. You can thank Universal for that. But with the Iron Man experience in Hong Kong and now Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout in California, and I think there's like another Avengers or like an Ant-Man attraction coming to Hong Kong soon.
Yeah. It's an Avengers attraction.
Each Marvel movie, I think each Marvel movie since the Avengers, except for I think a couple here and there, have made $1 billion. I almost feel that they don't necessarily need to worry about the risk because Marvel's popular. But then, our Marvel film's going to be as popular in 10 years from now. Next year is the 10th anniversary of the first Iron Man movie. Which means that, like a decade ago, we had never even heard of the idea of a cinematic universe of films.
Oh, man.
And now it's like everything's a cinematic universe. I mean, like the Kong movie that came out, that's a cinematic universe.
Spoilers.
Yeah, but not really. I mean, like after the first Godzilla, like when they announced like they wanted to make a King Kong film, I think we all saw where they were going.
Pretty much.
Like it's a sign of the times.
It is.
And it is what it is. I understand being hung up on nostalgia because, I mean, like, there's certainly that thing for me and Tiffany, and I'm sure you guys as well, that getting older sucks.
True.
I don't mean in the sense that, like, things start breaking and you grow hair in places you don't want it to grow, but that...
I've always done that.
Oh, yeah. But that... No, but, like, I mean, certainly for me, there are a lot of attractions that I miss, not because I need them back in my life, but because I feel like I took them for granted when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that now that they're gone, it's like I kind of miss them. And like they're also on that kind of cusp where I remember them from my childhood, but video cameras weren't as extensive around, so I can't easily go find it on YouTube. You know?
Yeah.
But also, if they were still here, would you be riding them every time you go to the park?
Probably
or would
not.
You be dying for
Probably
something?
not. Yeah.
It's the strength of your memory that
Yeah.
really is what drives it into the top list of the attractions for you.
Going back to the preservation, modernization, this will be the last thing I bring up because, like, I know we got to end this at some point, and I'm sure people listening are just tired of hearing me talk. But I think probably one of the finest examples of modernization and preservation working together, and this is not an e-ticket ride by any means, Alice in Wonderland at Disneyland.
I agree. I think that is a very
Yeah.
good example.
Yeah, the little bits of projection and like new lighting that they threw into that attraction, I think are a great example of how to keep the original feel of the attraction, but bring it into the 21st century or even, 22nd century. Who knows? Who knows if we'll get that far?
I agree.
Yeah, that I feel that that's how you update an attraction. You don't make a huge deal out of it. You simply keep it with the times.
I think that's honestly a very good period to the sentence of our conversation, honestly, because there's never going to be one specific answer to any of this, and I think that's a good solution to the problem of modernization versus preservation.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
I'd say so, but most importantly, thank you two for joining us. Well, mostly Steven, a little bit of Tiffany, joining in on this conversation.
Wow, that's so mean for Tiffany. She's right here. She can hear you.
Well, it's more the fact that me and you talk a lot.
Oh, right, yeah.
I could say the same thing. This podcast is 70% Gabe most of the time.
You know what? Extended queue is the exact same thing. So, and I mean, like, I think Tiffany enjoyed doing extended queue, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
Well, I mean, like, you're not going to say no right here, but
I would like to think that at least when you're talking about 70% Steven, 30% Tiffany.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as at least shooting percentage. So Steven shot a lot more and he missed a little bit more than Tiffany shot less, but she made more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's that if Tiffany's gonna say something, she's gonna aim for the bullseye. Me, I'm just aiming for like any part of the target.
That's kind of what I do too, and that's the dynamic on our side as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, it happens all the time. But anyway, thank you so much for joining our show today.
No problem.
And I mean, do you want to plug anything? I know that Extended Queue isn't necessarily going on anymore, but where can people find you and have conversations with you at least? To that extent?
The best place to reach me, even though I said bad things about it, is Twitter. Which even though it has digested itself into my personal Twitter account, it is still at Extended Queue. That is the place to reach me. It's also the place to reach Tiffany. Tiffany just doesn't really use Twitter in the first place.
I don't like Twitter.
Yeah, but if you have a question for her, that really is the best place.
Just give it to him and he'll ask.
Exactly. Give it to me. I'll say, Tiffany, it's for you. And then, she'll answer. Also, you can email us still, extendedq@gmail.com. There you have it.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much. It was a blast. And make sure everybody listening right now, stay tuned into the show because we're going to still have a lot of really fun Extended Queue topics and segments involved in our show.
Whether you like it or not.
They are not going away anytime soon.
But we will in our TARDIS. Wow, 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 wow.
So there they go in their TARDIS.
Bye.
They already left.
Oh.
You saw it disappear.
I
Why
know.
you didn't close the door?
Well, maybe they'll feel my goodbye.
They do. They feel
Yeah.
it in their two hearts.
Well, they just left so abruptly.
They did leave very abruptly. They have 2 dogs to take care of and whatever else they do out in the desert. But it was such a great episode. I'm so glad that Steven and Tiffany were able to join us. Before we end the show, I do have a few shout-outs to give to some people. There's been a lot of really good support on Twitter and on social media, and people who are becoming friends of the show here. And I'd like to just give them a little bit of recognition.
Yeah. So
I wanted to say hello and thank you to UUOP, which is the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. They're awesome. They also have rats, and they're also a couple, so they're kind of our like kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. Awesome show, by the way. Everybody should check it out on iTunes. Theme Park Conquerors. So they kind of are brand new to Twitter as well. They've been retweeting and talking and interacting with us, so they're pretty awesome as well. And then Wild Gravity Travels. A lot of people know this. Incredible coverage on roller coasters and a lot of theme park news. So I wanted to give shout outs to all three of those people from Twitter because they're awesome. And then also, I wanted to say welcome to some new bloggers of ours. So we're going to have some people blogging for our website, and they're DNA and Disney, and they're going to be bringing us a lot of Disney news, hopefully, in our blog and doing some more of our visit and pictures on our website.
So everyone keep checking our blog, and we'll post new stuff all the time from our friends.
You can also find it on our social media. So if you want to find our website, it's actually themeparkduo.com. Then you can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Periscope, and we're at Theme Park Duo. Also, if you enjoy the show, make sure you leave us a 5-star written review on iTunes.
Yeah, it really helps us out. It brings us up in the ratings. It makes our show easier to find so more people can enjoy our show.
So they can enjoy our nonsense.
Yes.
A lot of nonsense.
A lot of that.
But how can people find you, Nikki?
People can find me on Twitter at NikkiM_313.
And they can follow me at Laker793 on Twitter. Thanks for listening, everybody. And remember, there's always a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. See ya!
Thanks for riding with the Theme Park Duo. Make sure to gather all your belongings before the end of the podcast. Bye-bye.